At the university graduation party, a mysterious elderly woman suddenly appeared. She walked straight towards the man in the center of the event. When the man turned around, the woman shoved something into his hand and said a very strange phrase. After speaking, she turned and left, disappearing into the crowd, leaving Richard completely confused. He was sure he had never seen the woman before. As he looked down, he realized the object in his hand was a warm golden pocket watch. Richard didn't understand why she gave it to him. The party continued lively, but little did Richard know, the elderly woman was already in tears. It was as if she had finally fulfilled a long-held wish. She locked herself in a room, one last time, listening to her favorite familiar music, and gazing out at the unforgettable view. With a script in her arms that hadn't yet been published, the elderly woman passed away quietly on a bench, leaving this world forever. 8 years passed in the blink of an eye. Richard was no longer the naive student he once was. He had become a playwright, and the famous play hanging on the wall was the very script the woman had held. Recently, Richard had been struggling with writer's block, so he packed his bags and decided to take a spontaneous trip. But just as he was about to leave, he ran into his boss, demanding the overdue manuscript, and his excitement for the trip was dashed. So, he went to the countryside to breathe in some fresh air. Unexpectedly, on a country road, he found a restaurant. Without a clear plan, he impulsively decided to stay for a few days, unaware that this restaurant, called Grand, had once been the home of the elderly woman. After checking in, Richard was greeted by Arthur, an elderly man with white hair. He showed Richard to the best room with a great view, and assured him to come to him if he needed anything. Richard instinctively reached for the pocket watch to check the time. He had kept it all these years. He walked into a museum and felt a gaze watching him. He turned around, and to his surprise, the source of the gaze was a beautiful woman's smile. It seemed she had been waiting for him for a long time, but when he looked down, he found no information about her. Richard quickly found Arthur and explained his confusion. Despite his obsession with McKenna, it seemed pointless. He and she had met at the wrong time. Richard decided, at least he could write McKenna into his work. Inspired, he hurried to the local library, staying late into the night, until he found a clue in a seemingly unimportant weekly magazine. At that moment, Richard nearly gasped in shock, because the photo of the elderly McKenna looked exactly like the woman who had handed him the pocket watch at the party 8 years ago. The next morning, Richard went straight to the author of the book, but after hearing his story, the author immediately tried to close the door and send him away. Only when she saw the pocket watch did she finally let Richard in. It turned out the woman was a theater enthusiast, and had collected many theater artifacts from that era. Among them were McKenna's dress and personal belongings. Suddenly, Richard noticed a very familiar sci-fi book in the corner. The woman mentioned that McKenna had read that book over and over again in her lifetime. Then she pulled out a music box, made by McKenna herself, inspired by the Grand Restaurant, and the song playing was Richard's favorite. Everything seemed too coincidental. Richard was in disbelief. He felt certain that there was some connection between him and McKenna,